Traditional websites are dead, at least according to today's experts. AI is transforming the way we use websites from static to smart. We'll hear how AI interaction is changing the game, what you need to know. Expert Connections starts now. Businesses are facing a major shift in how they connect with customers online. It's a shift that's evolving faster than most of us can keep up. Welcome to Expert Connections. I'm your host, Julie Holton Smith. Good thing for us, we have two experts today who are going to help talk us through some of this shift and a product that they have just launched to, in fact, help us through it, business owners with their websites. Today, we're talking about the future of websites, the rise of AI-powered online experiences. Joining us are Jesse Flores and Scott Remington of Super Web Pros. Guys, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here, Julie. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Glad to have you. You have recently launched your newest product called Smart Sites. I know it's an AI-driven solution. I've seen your demos. Jesse, talk us through this. But first, I have to start with this question, you guys. Are traditional websites as we know them dying?
They are, and they're dying a little faster than I think you would think. So for those who don't pay attention to this stuff every day like we do, I was giving a presentation about 2 weeks ago to a small networking group, not the kind of thing I do often, but I was doing one of these. And I was saying to this group, say, guys, within 5 years, I promise you this is going to happen. You're going to have your own personal AI. And you're going to say to that personal AI, I need a new pair of brown leather shoes. My budget is $200. Can you go and find them for me? Find something that I'm going to like, give me final approval, and then just have it shipped to my house. And what'll happen, and I was telling this group, what'll happen is your little personal AI, let's call it Jesse AI, will go out to the internet and we'll find the Alan Edmonds AI and the Johnson Murphy AI and the Amazon AI all at one time, and we'll say, Jesse's looking for brown leather shoes, size 10, budget $200, and it will go and it'll talk to each of these individual AIs, and then come back to me and say, hey, Alan Edmonds is $300, it's out of your budget, but these look really nice. Johnson Murphy, it's $250, but they're giving you a $50 discount because they looked you up and they realize you're a good customer. You've been buying Johnson Murphy for 10 years. Amazon's got these things, they're cheaper than your budget, but they're, not great reviews. What would you like to do? And I would say, let's go ahead and get the Johnson Murphys, and then they'll show up at my house tomorrow. And I said this to this group, and I said, this will happen within less than 5 years. The next day, ChatGPT, OpenAI, they released to ChatGPT what's called Operator. An operator is the first generation of what's called a computer using agent, the first generation of agent who is able to use a computer to go and do tasks. Now, right now, some of those tasks are, I'll call them a little bit silly. They're not really silly, but the day after it came out, I actually had Operator go to Grubhub and order me chicken shawarma from a local restaurant through Grubhub and have it delivered at home while I was working late. I wasn't involved in anything other than logging into my Grubhub account and making sure that, I picked the right sides. Beyond that, I didn't do anything. I didn't go to grubhub.com. I didn't search for, I don't even know where we got the food from because AI figured it out for me, right? And all I know is that it delivered, it was good, and I was, able to continue doing my meeting. So this happened 24 hours after I called 5 years. Now, I knew it was going to be 5 years, but people get freaked out when they think about, if you get freaked out a little bit less if you're like, oh, that's 5 years away. Well, I wasn't expecting 5 hours away. I was a little bit taken aback by that, but it really cemented that the thesis that we've got, which is that the next generation of internet user isn't Gen Z, it's not Gen Alpha, it's AI. And this user is going to be online this year. Operator was just released. Anthropic is working on a similar one. Google's got a project they're working on, Google Mariner, which will be the next generation as well. They're putting billions of dollars. Meta's putting tens of billions of dollars into these computer using agents to make the next generation largely autonomous. And so the website that we have today that is, pretty for humans are actually not great for AI in a lot of different ways.
Okay, so this gives a whole different meaning, to that phrase of like, I'll have my people call your people. Now it's I'll have my AI talk to your AI and then figure this out. I mean, this sounds so futuristic, but as you said, it's already here. Tell me about smart sites. So how does smart sites, and you said, right now we really love a beautiful website, right? Like we love the pictures and we love the design and layout and a lot of that traditionally has been a part of how people navigate. And, as we're talking through to clients, where the eye is drawn to and how you look through the web, the traffic flow through a website, that it sounds like is going to be out because AI doesn't need pretty pictures. What does AI need? How does this change what a website looks like?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I think there's a couple of fundamental ways that I've been thinking about this with the team and we've approached this. So the first, and this may be a little bit surprising to you and to maybe the people that are watching right now. Did you know that on a good website, not even an average website, like on a good website, something like 80 to 90% of the code on a website is just for aesthetics? Now, when you are, and when you're talking about AI and the way AI stores information and works off of what are called tokens, which you can think of as words, when you've got an AI, first of all, that is parsing all of this information, let's say 90% of what it parses is not actually useful for content retrieval in order to sort of rank in AI. People talk about this. They see the writing on the wall. Like they're saying, I'm searching on ChatGPT. How do I show up on ChatGPT? The reality is they work on a fundamentally different algorithm than traditional search does. And I have a suspicion, first, that the thinner a website is in terms of content to code ratio is going to elevate the likelihood it shows up in AI because the cost of processing tokens is so much more expensive than the cost of just looking something up in an index. Now, I know I'm oversimplifying these technologies quite a bit, but they're mathematically and from a cost structure directionally correct. So one of the first big things is you're going to see a lot of websites will start to get a lot simpler. And a lot of the things that we spend a lot of time trying to make look pretty or interactive for humans will start to go away because they're more expensive for AI to process. The second thing that you're going to see happen is that AI at the moment is very good at what's called shape detection, but very bad at what's called texture detection. What I mean by that is if I were to show you a statue of an elephant made out of brick, you would very quickly be able to tell this is an elephant and that it's made out of brick. AI can't do that. AI, or at least not well, not yet, not consistently. So what will happen is it would get confused about what to do and where to go. What that means is that as these AIs, the first version of these AIs are all operating on really, really rapid screenshots and image processing. I don't know if that'll always be the case, but that's the way they work right now. What that means is that, for instance, when you have a modal that clicks up and you've got kind of the dark background with like a form in the middle or something, it can be really difficult for it to do shape detection if you do not have really clear geometric and highly contrasted elements on your site. And in fact, we saw this when I was trying to order P2A initially. Sorry, P2A, if you're watching this. Actually, if you're watching this, contact us because your website needs some help with operator. Because I abandoned P2A when I first tried to get it to place the order because AI was getting confused. It could not detect the shape of the button relative to the background of the site. Now, I could look at it as a human and be like, click the button, right? But I didn't care. At that point, I was like, dude, I'm busy. Just go order it from somewhere else that I know is already going to be accessible to operator. And so I abandoned P2A and we went to some company, I don't even know what it was whatever Grubhub recommended. So the design, the things like contrast and geometric clarity will start to become a lot more important. So what you're going to see, I think, is first a thinning out of code, and two, you're going to see a simplification of sites to make it really, really clear what each element is. And a lot of like picture backgrounds and carousels and interactive iframes, those go away. AI can't interact with them very well. So those have to go away because they're very difficult for a screenshot to interact with. And then the final part is you'll start to see your website evolve from something that I browse and search to something I interact with. So why would I need to go and figure out where in your menu X, Y, or Z services when I can just go to your site and be like, hey, do you do SEO? Question mark. And then the AI says, Hey, that's a great question. We do SEO, but it varies by industry. Before we get started, can you tell me like who you are and what industry you're in? At which point now, my agent, which is not just giving me clever content, it's giving me clever content connected to my data, but also connected to APIs. So that as soon as Scott says, yeah, my name is Scott, and I own a digital marketing agency, it says, oh, great, let me go ahead and send that into the CRM directly. Now, this is all happening under the hood. So Scott's still having the conversation with the AI and telling it all the information that it's asking for and reading what it's giving it back. But under the hood, the AI is using tools to be able to send this information back to our databases, qualifying Scott as a potentially good lead or not, disqualifying him potentially, and making sure that me on this side is able to evaluate whether or not, or the rate to which we should reach out to Scott and continue that conversation in real life, right? So that's the third way that this will change. So you'll see thinner sites, they will get much clearer geometric design in the short run, and they're going to be completely interactive.
I heard I heard a lot of really important things there, Jesse, but the marketer in me heard two really important things that stand out. One, you were talking about during point number two about the geometric design. When we focus on branding and brand loyalty, it sounds like that could really go out the window if you're missing the mark on efficiency and being able to have the AI operate and work through your website the way that it needs to. And the other thing I heard is a real emphasis on content, the right amount
Yes.
of content in order for AI to be pulling that information from your website. You need to have that information on your website. And if it doesn't exist, then there won't be information to pull. So, Scott, I want to ask you, a lot of businesses have added chatbots to their
Mm-hmm.
websites. It's kind of a quick fix for AI. And I don't know that they're necessarily, great AI driven tools even, but kind of this quick fix to seem like they have AI pulling information from their websites. Why do most of these chatbots fall short, especially with what you and Jesse are describing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think part of the reason is that they are there to pretend to be a need, but not actually getting at what the problem they're trying to solve is. So what will happen is with these chatbots, they're not really intelligent. They aren't hooked up to AI, and maybe they have a little bit of their knowledge base in there. So really, the whole purpose of a chatbot, right, as it stands right now, is to diagnose a problem and get it to a person, right?
Mhm.
Well, what if you could actually not only diagnose the problem, get the solution, get something booked, and then either sell something or actually get the action that somebody wants to do, right? That's the difference between a chatbot and a smart site, right? A chatbot might have a little bit of context. It might have a little bit of a knowledge base updated, but it's not going to search the entire website, right? It's not in real time going to understand contextually kind of updates or content that you're putting in there, right? So for example, right, let's say somebody's going to, on a website and there's something in a blog that might be pulled that is contextual to that question, right? That chatbot's not going to have that, right? It might have, well, this costs, $19.99, and let me get you to a sales assistant to do that. But it's not going to actually understand the context of the website itself. And fundamentally, it's not going to be very smart, right? I think a lot of people over the years, rightly so, have been turned off to chatbots because, quite frankly, they just haven't been contextual or intelligent enough to understand. And the difference between a chatbot and a smart site is that a smart site takes into account everything on the website, right? Everything that you guys want to pull in and want to, put behind the scenes, it can do it, and it can do it really well.
I was
And even
blown
stuff that's not
away.
on the website. I think that's another really important thing. So the way that we've conceptualized this is that there's some content that you want public in order to get indexed in search and chat. But then there's some content, let's say pricing, that you don't want to be public, but you do want your sales agent to have access to so that if it ends up being a really qualified lead, it now knows it can think through, okay, it's time to share this information. I think, Julie, to also augment what Scott's saying, is like a chatbot is an appendage to a website. This is about fundamentally changing your website architecture in order to have one or more different agents, which, by the way, you can also tune. So the way that these agents work is that you have a system prompt like you would for like a normal agent, but you also have the ability to connect to different APIs. Most chatbots can't connect to different APIs, and they're not deeply integrated with, if I add a new post, it's automatically part of my AI's brain. If I add a new transcript, which isn't public to the internet, but is public to my brain, it learns it immediately. And I, as a standard website user, if I'm familiar with WordPress, I can go in and I can create as many agents as I want, specialized for different things. And when you ask about branding, I actually think branding becomes even more important. So you know this better than I do. Everyone talks about brand voice. Your agent can literally be trained to speak in your voice, right? So branding is now less about whether or not you've got X or Y typography. I mean, that will still matter, or whether you've got X or Y color scheme, that will still matter. Like, right, that doesn't go away, but actually you augment branding now with the ability to create agents that have specifically your brand voice. So when I'm coming, to this or that site, it says howdy instead of hey, or hi instead of hello, or it uses, it's really helpful and really friendly versus, trying to get to the bottom of the sale. Like all of these things that you spend a lot of time trying to coach clients to do well in their own correspondence. Well, their website, not only will the copywriting be reflected in the website, the literal website itself will be intelligent enough to know to use that language when somebody's talking to it. You can imagine it like your own personal GPT that's already been trained on your tone and your content, and it is literally your website experience. The final thing I'll say about relative to chatbots is because this is built into your site, you can also then go in and see, well, what conversations are people having? What conversations is the AI having? Is it hallucinating? Is it not hallucinating? But more
So
importantly,
valuable.
100%, right? Now you can start coming up with new content ideas, or what's not clear, or could we make it a little bit better at sales? Because you can actually now learn from what's actually happening on your site, and this is all stored in your database, so you can go and get these analytics yourself, right? So it's not by taking it from being an appendage to your website and making it the fundamental core of your website. It's the difference between like an add-on and like your core integrity. Like at this point, your website is no longer a brochure, it's an avatar. And that's a completely different way of conceptualizing the internet.
Whew, Scott, how do we shift our mindset? I mean, like we are as humans, we like as little change as possible, as slowly as possible. How do we get ourselves ready for this shift? Let's put on our business owner's hat. How
Sure.
do we say, okay, I'm ready to do away with these beautiful pictures and especially because it could be hard even we have so many clients who just don't want to change their site because they put so much work into it the first time and now it's going to look completely different. What's that
Yeah.
mindset shift?
I think for me as a business owner, right, you follow the money, right? I think that is one of the biggest things that I do. I look to see kind of what the biggest players in the game are doing, right? So Alphabet just announced that I want to get this number right. I believe they're spending $75 billion in capital expenditures just in 2025 alone, and 50 billion in AI initiatives, right? As you know, Alphabet Google is by far and away the biggest investor in search and ad spend, right? How to get to some site. So for us, when we look at kind of investing in these technologies and how to wrap businesses on, right, the first thing we need to do is to identify what's happening, right? So what's happening currently at that top level, because it always trickles down, right? Google has a massive following and will influence consumer behavior, right? It's just a simple statement there. Second, then, okay, how as business owners can we shift our mindset from what we've been doing in the past of almost Googling to more conversation, right? Everything on the web and what Jesse's been talking about is changing how we think about interacting, whether it be thinking about how do we use AI, right? We don't use AI as Google, right? Because if we do, we aren't going to get the best results. We have to fundamentally change the way we're thinking that AI is my PhD level assistant that I can use to help me in any task that I do. Great. What does that mean? I need to learn how to prompt. I need to think clearly through things. I need to learn all the things that go around. I need to critically think a little bit differently than I did in the past. Instead of saying, let's rely on my previous history and kind of my talent, how can I get AI involved and help too, right? Because when we start doing that, all of those things then start to play in line with where the technologies that Jesse and I are talking about is using conversations to move forward, right? So if we're using conversations to move forward on the internet, what does that mean? It means we understand how to use ChatGPT. We understand that ChatGPT is putting a lot of money and OpenAI into search, right? It means that we need to learn how to prompt to talk to these AI. It means that on our websites, then eventually consumers, which are going to want to find things more efficiently, will want to do the same thing on our sites, right? It means that we need to learn how these framework works so that we can talk to these AI so that eventually we can tell the AI what to do, which is what Jesse's referring to an operator. So fundamentally to me, it's changing a little bit of thinking, looking at kind of where the money is going and training your staff and yourselves on how do I use these tools Where is it going? And fundamentally, you're going to see, and most likely see, an increase in business results.
So Julie, one thing I'll add to that, and I think this is, we'll have a demo for this for you later, is the other day we were testing Operator on our website. We said, Operator, go to Super Web Pros and get a quote on a smart site. Okay. And so Operator went over to Super Web Pros. It found the area where it could interact with our AI. And it said to our AI, tell me about, I need a quote on a smart site. Our AI, right, is over here and it says, happy to help you. Tell me a little bit about yourself and we'll give you this information, right? So then the Operator asks me as the user over here, it says, wants to know your name and what industry. And so I give it that. And Operator goes back to our superwebpros.com and it says, hey, my name is Jesse Flores. This is what he does, yada, yada, yada. So then our agent over here, our Super Web Pros agent, is like, oh, that's really great. Sounds like for you in this industry, you would use a smart site for boom, 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 boom. But it's really going to depend on this, and this. Would you like to schedule some time to meet with somebody on the team and talk? And then the Operator over here says to me, hey, they want to schedule a meeting. They've proposed 4 or 5 different days. Does any one of those work for you? I said, yeah, pick one, doesn't matter. So then it goes back to our agent, and then those two worked out a time on the calendar where it worked. No human involved other than me giving it consent to share information, right? So in terms of what does it mean for a business owner, it is a 24/7, like everyone talks about your website being a 24/7 salesperson. Like it's a 24/7 sales brochure, but a smart site is a 24/7 sales person and a 24/7 customer support person and a 24/7 technical support person. Now, all of a sudden, your website is no longer a brochure with a bunch of information. It is agentic. And as a result, whether it's Scott or whether it's Operator, it's able to interact and meet the person exactly where they need to be. I mean, what this does for accessibility, for conversion rates, like all the stuff that's been the holy grail of the internet for a long time, we can do it now, right? Because you can meet everybody exactly where they are, regardless of needs, regardless of where they are in the buyer's journey, regardless of whether what they're looking for. If your agent has something valuable to offer, people and machines can interact with it.
Okay, so let's expand on that a little bit, Jesse, because wow, at a site that can do all of these things, and you've mentioned that smart sites can learn and evolve over time. So how does that work in practice?
Yeah, so it works one of 2 ways. So the principal way is as you feed it new information. So let's say I want this information about this conversation we're having to be on my website. As soon as I save this in the AI brain, it is immediately indexed. And so when somebody comes and they ask a question about smart sites, they might get a nuanced answer from this very podcast that I've uploaded into my site. That's one way. The second is it takes the default agents that are inherent in the model, whether it's OpenAI, Anthropic. Right now, we're only supporting OpenAI, but we will release Anthropic, DeepSeek, and Gemini probably before the summer. So it will take those underlying models, and the conversation has conversational memory, so that as you're having a conversation with it, it's remembering everything that's in that conversation and will be contextually aware of where it is in the conversation. And we save that conversation for like 7 days. So if you come back a couple days later, you're like, oh, I had this question that my boss asked me. I come back to the site, it'll remember your conversation from there and continue along the path that you needed to come down. Now, under the hood, because we're storing all this and making it available in the database, you can now use that information for what's called fine tuning, allowing you to start tuning the models to get better at answering different questions. But there's really 2 ways, probably more than 2 ways, but there's 2 fundamental ways that you can make an AI seem smarter. One is by the quality of the information you give it. This is called retrieval augmented generation. The second is by the tone of information that it presents. This is called fine tuning. And we support both of those in this paradigm.
Okay, so as we've been watching a little bit of on some of the video showing how smart site technology works and just some of the demos here, I want to just, this is going to be a little bit of a repeat, but I want to point out it looks to some, maybe to a novice, it looks like a typical search bar that you might see on a website where there's, the kind of, the area where you enter your question. So can you talk about, because this obviously is very different than like the search bar that currently exists on our website, mConnexions.com. Can you talk through for those of us who are like, well, this looks like something that I've already seen on websites. What's so different? Talk through what's different about it.
Yeah, so the first thing is instead of giving you a list of results or taking you to a specific page, it's constructing the information on the fly. So based on the question you ask, or the question Scott asked, or the question I asked, each of which has their own flavor, or if you start with a feature card, right, as soon as you start to follow up, it's generating the information on the fly. So the question is, well, where's it getting the information from? So when you configure one of these from the get-go, and this gets to your point earlier about content, it'll automatically take all the content on your website and ingest it into what's called a RAG model, meaning we will take it and basically turn it into AI food that AI can understand. And so the first thing is, rather than me having to search to go to a page and now I'm clicking, 2 clicks to go somewhere else, it's generating that content and that information on the fly contextually based on my specific interaction, but using the information on the website to generate that, Like would be a little bit facetious, but I'll be a little facetious here. Like your website could basically be 2 pages going forward. It could be a homepage and the page where people interact. And the rest of it could be content that is just hidden under the surface if you wanted it to be that. And it would still be smart. It would still be able to interact with information without needing any of the other pages. Now, I don't think they go away. People will still want to know about your company. They'll still want to know something about your services, depending on where they are in the buyer's journey. But at any given point, if they're like, oh, do you, I see that you do roofing, but do you do siding? I don't need to like ask that question of somebody or wonder or search Google. I can just ask the website. I'm on the roofing page. I can just say, hey, do you guys do siding too? And then it will say, oh yeah, it's a great question. We do siding. Here's how it works. Yada, yada, yada. Like that interaction now, it's not returning me a list. It's like, it's the difference between Google and ChatGPT. Like when you search in Google, you get a list of results. When you search in ChatGPT, you get a fully formed answer. And that's the difference. Like when you use a search bar on a traditional website, you're going to get a list of results. When you use a smart site search bar, you're going to get a fully formed answer. And that fully formed answer is going to be based on the information you've published or made available to that AI.
And I imagine, Scott, that those fully formed answers then help through the smart site improve lead generation and customer conversion. You mentioned earlier that business owners need to follow the numbers, follow the money. And you were talking about Meta and Alphabet and all of the investments into AI that we know are coming this year. Talk to us about, and I think business owners, we all want to know the bottom line here. If we're going to invest in something new, invest in new technology, where's the return there? What does that look like? Can you talk to us about lead generation and customer conversion? How do smart sites help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great question because I think, the whole purpose of these smart sites is to get something done quicker and faster, right? It's our hypothesis that through conversations, you're going to be able to go faster. So why don't we use a very rudimentary example, right? So if I have a menu and I'm going to a website and I'm trying to point and click around, right? How long do you think we're going to stay on that site to try to do that, right? If it takes more than, probably 10, 15 seconds, maybe a minute at most, you're off that, right? Yeah, absolutely.
It's 7.
And right, yeah, 7 seconds. But let's say with a conversation, you are directing the question right to what you want to get to. The smart site will know then where to take you. You're then able to complete that action, whether it's book a meeting, whether it's to learn more, etc. You're in control, right? And you have a couple things. 1, you're having, the usage go up. 2, you're getting that stickiness. 3, you're almost kind of helping them to move along their journey, right? And all that plays along. You're building a relationship that they don't even know you're building because you're able to answer them in real time. So it's a really interesting paradigm shift and something that we're so excited to display because we really think that people that use conversation, that use ChatGPT, find themselves more productive. And what best way to display productivity is by helping increase whatever conversion a business is looking for.
Yeah, Julie, I think of it as a difference between seeing, let's say, an mConnexions ad in the on Facebook versus talking to Julie specifically. Right? Like, I mean, you tell me which one's going to convert better, someone talking to you or someone that sees your Facebook ad. All right. I mean, even just someone that sees your Facebook ad, assuming it's the best Facebook ad ever, they have to click on it. Then they have to go to wherever that click takes them. Then they have to go to wherever that click takes them to get on your calendar to then have a conversation. It's 5 steps. But if they were just talking to you, like you're probably going to close them because you're good at what you do, right? I'm going to close them because I'm good at what I do, right? Like any business owner is going to close them because they're good at what they do. So what we're doing is just saying, look, instead of you having to go 6 clicks to get to a call or even pick up a phone number and call them, like just have the conversation now and do that with, you know, the smartest things you have to offer, which is going to be all the content that gets created that you should create in order to make your website smart. Now, to your point earlier, if I'm a like a dog groomer, for example, like there's probably not a lot of need for a super smart site because like, you know, you go in and you're probably just gonna like book a very small local business. Like you're gonna book like taking your dog to the groomer that's closest to you. Like there's not a lot of education, but maybe there would be. Maybe if you were a dog grooming franchise, there'd be a ton of education that you want people to do to route somebody to the right groomer in your region. Right. So it's not going to be for everybody. It's not going to be for every use case. If you're one of these guys that has a 4-page website, don't waste your time or money on a smart site. But if you're, you know, a company that's got dozens or hundreds of pages of content or service information or blog posts or whatever, like you would be silly not to get a smart site because nobody's reading all that content anyways. Right? No one's going to browse around and be like, oh, let me just go check out the Super Web Pros blog and, you know, binge on that for a while. But the blog is extremely valuable if I'm able to have a conversation and say, how does X, Y, or Z work? And it's like pulling from all these blog posts now and answering that question. Well, now my blog went from being something that was like a really nice thing to have on my website to being essential for being able to provide the best possible service in my voice, in my tone at this time. It's no longer an option. If I'm actually serious about growth, having a blog or having, you know, content is no longer an option. It is now a necessity because your AI otherwise, like, why wouldn't I just get your information from ChatGPT? If the only thing I can get, you know, relative to what you would have to say is that I'm going to get on ChatGPT, there's no value in me coming to your website in the first place. But if your website has valuable content independent of ChatGPT or Perplexity or Google or whatever it is, now your site actually has something valuable to offer people. And it's no longer a question of whether you should have that stuff. It's you need to have this interaction on your site.
Jesse Flores and Scott Remington of Super Web Pros, I can see why there is so much excitement and buzz around the launch of your brand new smart sites. Thanks for talking about it on the show today. I know we have a lot more really that we could talk about and dive into, so we will make sure to dive into this more. I'd love to hear from our audience. What questions do you have about smart sites? And you know what? Bring on the criticism or the critical thinking too. I want to hear any objections. Anyone who thinks that AI is not going to be changing websites, or if this isn't quite the way it's going to go, bring those questions to us. I will ask the guys. We'll talk through that. We will demo smart sites. Guys, thanks for being on the show. I think this is a great place to start. Is there anything we didn't talk about today? Final parting words.
There's so many things, Julie. I have no final parting words other than like, look, the future is here and it's coming faster than you realize. If you are a company that's ever invested in any kind of content, you should reach out to us because we can make that content extremely more valuable almost overnight by using it to train an AI sales agent that is literally a part of your website's DNA and not just an add-on that you have to, you know, tack on there for when it's convenient.
Yeah, I think what I'll leave with is that an investment now in AI will pay off beyond, I think, what anyone can think of, that these technologies are moving so fast. Hyper-personalization, especially for the small, medium-sized businesses, is more crucial than ever, as you're going to see a moat being carved further and further out by OpenAI, Google, and the big ones. So jumping on this technology will ensure that, you know, you're going to be able to compete, you know, going forward. Because if not, what we're seeing with Operator and a lot of these technologies is that they are working with some of the bigger folks here, and we want to ensure everyone has an opportunity to use AI for the best of their ability.
Superwebpros.com. Check out the info on their site. Ask their site about super sites. You'll get a lot of information. Have a conversation with them, and we'll include all that info below for you. Guys, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Julie. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Julie.
That is all for this episode of Expert Connections. I will link to other videos with Scott and Jesse so you can see more from the guys on what they're working on in the world of AI. And we'll see you over in the next video.